Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Once again, we will be exploring true horror stories taken directly from various Reddit pages. For those who are new to the channel, I will be adding software to my voice to make it sound a little scarier, so don't be confused when I sound a little different. Also, this video will be a compilation of all the stories told on my channel this week, since some of you seem to enjoy longer form videos. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe, it really does help the channel grow. Without further ado, let's get started.
On Omegle. So for some context, I am a teenage male with long dark hair, and this happened maybe an hour ago when I was home alone. I saw all these videos on YouTube about Omegle horror stories and pranks. Now I'm not particularly brave or anything, but I will do something if I'm bored. After thinking for a while, I built up the courage to go on Omegle. I wanted to be funny so I wouldn't respond to anything they said. I then came across this guy that kept saying for me to talk or else. And being a teenager, I wanted to make him mad, so I asked what he would do in chat. All he said was, "You should talk more," and then left. I felt pretty proud of me being a jerk, but slightly disturbed, so I turned Omegle off and went to my tutoring class. After a few minutes of Khan Academy with my tutor, I heard my dogs barking, and they wouldn't stop even when I took them into another room. I figured maybe somebody made a loud noise or had a dog whistle. Boy, was I wrong. After calming down my dogs and getting back to tutoring, I heard the noise this time. Somebody had knocked on my back door. My back door is gated off with a 4-foot fence and a lock. The only way somebody could get in is if they had a key or jumped over it. After looking outside for about 10 minutes, I called my stepdad and told him everything. He told me that when he gets home, he'll look around. I accepted that, because he is a doctor and has a lot of work. Half an hour passes. My dogs are outside, and I hear a thump outside my door. I looked around. There was a rock with blue paint on it. After that, I heard my dog barking at our driveway. I have never been this scared in my life. I just feel lucky to have 3 dogs in my house at all times. Now I'm not the kind to show emotion or get scared easily, but that freaked me out. I'm shaking and on the verge of calling the police, and as I was writing this, I remembered that guy on Omegle. Now I'm scared for my life and my family. My sister is the most socially awkward, overly sensitive person I know. It was our granddad who first pointed it out. "If Tilly keeps avoiding us, your grandma's going to get upset." For the longest time, we'd all assumed it was due to some insult he'd aimed at her, possibly after she'd come out. But she wouldn't say. "There's something not right with her." He'd grizzle. The whole situation enraged Mum. She'd rant and rave ahead of every visit, but Tilly, clearly hurting, would hold firm. And so it went, until both grandparents passed. Though she was nothing if not consistent. Tilly was awkward at school too, a total misanthrope. She tried to wear her friendlessness like a badge of honor, mind. But we were close. Every day she'd come home and we'd game together. "Made any friends today?" I'd ask. But she'd just cuddle in and say no, as always, until the day her phone buzzed. She was getting a snack, so I checked who it was from. Someone called Bliss. "You got a text." I fished once she was back. From Bliss. She looked at me wryly. "Girlfriend? Friend? Friend with benefits?" I jibed. "She's just Bliss," Tilly replied ambiguously. "You should meet up," I encouraged. Tilly rolled her eyes. "I'll come get you if it's shit." "Come get me," the text read. "Make up some excuse when you get here." Tilly had gone to the park with Bliss and a couple of other girls from school. Obviously something had gone wrong. 10 minutes later, we were arm in arm, walking back up the hill. I waved goodbye to the 3 chain-smoking girls, mostly for Tilly's sake. "She stinks," Tilly grimaced. I shook my head. This girl, Bliss, had taken an interest, and it seemed like Tilly had blown her off because she smoked. I didn't get it. Maybe she really was a lost cause. "I'm not going on the fucking trip," Tilly screeched. "I can't handle it," she said, wrinkling her nostrils. She seemed stressed, but Mum wasn't backing down. Tilly had been skipping school. This was the last straw. "I've paid for it," Mum spat. You're going. Tilly gave Mum a proper death stare. It was all over the news. The crash. Tilly's bus. Mum was beside herself. She'd found Tilly's phone upstairs and was pacing the kitchen, praying. There were no survivors. Then Tilly walked in through the door. She looked broken. We gathered her in our arms, crying like an amorphous human ball in the hallway. Then she slunk off upstairs. Mum nodded for me to follow. I sat beside her. Why didn't you get on the bus, Till? She was on her side, facing the wall. Her messy room was dim. The smell, she whispered. It was too much. Confused, I asked. What do you mean? I'm not sure I follow. It got stronger. For days. Weeks. It makes me sick. What smell, Till? She was silent for a moment. The smell of death. My wife is isolating me from everyone I know. I really think today will be the day, my love. Of course it will, darling. I knew this dance by heart. We'd been doing it for years. The truth is, today was unlikely to be the day she stepped outside. It never was. My wife wasn't always like this. She used to be happy, lively, normal. But 18 months ago, something changed. We stopped going out because she couldn't leave the house. Stopped having friends over because she didn't want to see anyone. Gradually, we became isolated from everyone we knew. It's frustrating, but it's a price I'm willing to pay. For better or worse. The phone rang. Hello? Hey, Chris. Good to hear from you. No, thanks, but today isn't good for me. Yeah, I know. Talk to you later. Who was that? Natalie asked. Oh, just Chris. He wanted me to come out with the guys. Her expression became panicked. You aren't going, are you? Of course not, darling. Oh, she replied, relieved. That's good. I mean, I want you to spend time with your friends, but I know, darling. I used to have lots of friends, but when things got bad with Natalie, I gradually stopped responding to their invitations. Sorry, I'm busy. I'm too tired tonight. Some other time. Chris was the only one who still asked. I guess he didn't mind the disappointment. We settled in for our nightly routine, curled up on the couch, watching a movie, her relaxing in my arms. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Natalie tensed up. Who could that be? She asked nervously. No idea, I replied. Ignore it, they'll go away. But they didn't. After 6 more rings, I answered the door to find Chris standing there. Hey, buddy, come on, we're going out. It's been too long. I'm not taking no for an answer. Sorry, man, I said. I'm not feeling up to it tonight. Are you sick? No, just feel like staying in. In it is, then, he exclaimed and pushed past me into the apartment. He went over and plopped down in the unused chair in the living room. So, what are we watching? Giving up, I sat down and unpaused the television. We sat there, watching the rest of the movie. Every once in a while, he'd chime in, and I'd respond to be polite. The rest of the time, I held Natalie close as we relaxed together, whispering quietly. Chris looked over occasionally, but we tried to be discreet. When the movie ended, I got up and walked Chris to the door. As I opened it, he looked at me with concern. So, I don't know how to ask this, but who were you whispering to? Crap. Later, as I buried Chris out back, I regretted that it had come to this. He'd been a good friend. I knew he'd meant well. But I couldn't let Natalie find out what he'd said. Not when she still thought she was alive. Where's my dad's face? When I was 8 years old, I learned how to read the air in a room. Some kids memorized multiplication tables or played make-believe. I learned to gauge the weight of silence, to recognize the sharpness of footsteps on the floor, to interpret the tone of a sigh. It became second nature, a skill I didn't even know I had until much later. Survival has a way of teaching you things without asking if you're ready to learn. My father wasn't always angry. At least I don't think he was. I have vague memories of him sitting in his recliner, a cigarette balanced between his fingers, laughing at something on the television. Those moments were rare, though, and as I grew older, they felt more like pieces of someone else's life that I had accidentally wandered into. The man I remember most clearly was the one who filled every corner of our house with his rage. It wasn't the kind of anger that exploded all at once. No, it was slower than that. It simmered, building under the surface until the smallest spark set it off. A glass left on the table, a shoe not placed neatly by the door, a toy left in the wrong room. Those were the kinds of things that turned his voice into a weapon, his hands into something I flinched away from. My mother never got in the way. She had learned her lessons long before I was old enough to notice. She kept her head down, her voice quiet, her movements careful. I used to wonder why she didn't leave, why she stayed and let him do what he did. But as I grew older, I began to understand. Fear is a powerful thing. It roots you in place, wraps itself around you until escape feels impossible. I was 10 the first time I tried to run away. I had packed a bag with some clothes, a book, and the little bit of cash I had saved from doing odd jobs for the neighbors. I waited until the house was dark and silent, my father's snores rumbling through the walls, before I slipped out the back door. The night air was cold, but it felt good on my skin, like freedom. I made it 3 blocks before I stopped, sitting on the curb and staring at the empty street ahead of me. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to call. I sat there until the sun started to rise, then I walked back home. He never found out about that night. If he had, I don't know what he would have done. The thought of it kept me from trying again. By the time I was 14, I had learned how to stay out of his way. I spent most of my time in my room, the door closed and locked whenever I could get away with it. I kept my music low and my movements quiet. When he was home, I tried to become invisible. Sometimes it worked. Other times, it didn't matter what I did. He would find me anyway, his voice sharp and cutting, his hands heavy and unrelenting. One night he came home drunk. That wasn't unusual, but something about the way he moved that night scared me more than usual. He stumbled through the house, slamming doors and muttering under his breath. I stayed in my room, my heart pounding in my chest, waiting for the inevitable. When he finally reached my door, I could hear the anger in his voice before he even spoke. "Open the door," he growled. I didn't move. I thought maybe if I stayed quiet, he would leave. I said, "Open the door." The doorknob rattled, then shook harder as he tried to force it open. I pressed myself against the far wall, my hands trembling. "I know you're in there," he shouted. "Open this door right now, or I swear—" The sound of wood splintering filled the room as he kicked the door open. I froze, unable to move as he stepped inside, his face twisted in fury. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he demanded, his words slurred. "You think you can lock me out of my own house?" I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. My throat felt like it was closing, my chest tightening as panic took over. He stepped closer, his hand raised. I flinched, bracing for the impact, but it never came. Instead, he grabbed the lamp on my bedside table and hurled it against the wall. The sound of shattering glass made me jump, tears streaming down my face as I curled into myself. "Clean it up," he said, his voice cold. Then he turned and walked out, leaving the door hanging off its hinges. I didn't move for a long time. When I finally did, my hands shook so badly I could barely hold the broom. I swept up the broken glass and threw it away, then sat on my bed and stared at the floor until the sun came up. That night was a turning point for me. I realized then that I couldn't keep living like this. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I had to find a way out. I started saving money, taking on any job I could find. I spent hours at the library, researching ways to get emancipated, looking up shelters and resources for kids like me. It wasn't easy. It took years of planning and waiting, of pretending everything was fine while I worked toward my escape. but eventually I did it. I packed a bag and left, this time for good. I found a shelter that helped me get back on my feet, helped me start a new life. I wish I could say I left it all behind, but the truth is, the scars my father left, both the ones you can see and the ones you can't, will always be with me. I still flinch at loud noises. I still have nightmares. But I'm free now, and that's something he can never take from me. Else is in the room. So I'm 12 at the time of writing this. This happened when I was about 10 or so years old. So after my brother, who is 17 months older than me, making him 11 when this happened, had one of his soccer games about an hour away from our house, we went home after stopping to grab something to eat. As soon as we all entered the gate, we picked up on the fact that our dogs were already barking. They don't normally bark until we get to the door, but despite this, we just assumed they were playing. Nothing really happened at all until about 10 p.m. At this time, we were all heading for bed, and me and my brother shared a room since our cousin was using our downstairs room. When we were talking in an attempt to entertain ourselves since we weren't tired at all, we heard the slightest noise from the bathroom. We were kind of startled by the noise, but just deemed it house noises. This went on for about an hour. Eventually we fell asleep and I woke up at around 2:40 a.m. So did my brother. We awoke to a loud crash from inside the closet, followed by a very heavily muffled CRAP. This is where we ran out of the room, me first as my brother was still half asleep. We ran downstairs screaming for our parents and our cousin, who was 23 at the time and very buff. When I heard my brother get out of bed, I heard the closet door being forced open. I only caught a glimpse of the person, obviously a man. A large beard, short black hair, and dressed in a gray shirt, with boots and jeans. He didn't seem to be holding anything. I'd be lying if I said the cliché. There seemed to be a long, sharp object in his hand. But we woke our cousin before we even made it down completely. I could tell because he was yelling at us to shut up, or he'd have the dogs beat us up. Of course, his smile faded once he heard a third set of footsteps, and we waited downstairs for a good minute before our cousin had to go back up to confront the man. We heard our cousin scream, and then silence. It didn't sound like a scream of pain. It sounded like a scream of fear. He ended up knocking the man unconscious and suffered a few good hits to the ribs. Our parents also came downstairs when they decided to go and yell at us for waking them up with all the noise. Eventually, the cops showed up and arrested the man. He was mid-40s and very mentally ill. I'm not sure who he was or where he is now, but I hope he is receiving the proper treatment and doing better. As of right now, nothing new has happened. I will update if it does, That laugh. So this incident happened to me when I was 17. It was around 3:37 a.m. in the midnight. I was watching anime on my phone. It was my friend. Let's call him Brian. So Brian called me in the midnight and asked me to come to his house. I asked him why, but all he said that just shut up and come to his place and come ASAP and drop the call. So in the next few minutes I was thinking of an escape plan. So I slowly went downstairs, picked up the keys to the main doors, and I was unlocking the front door. So just when I was about to open the door after unlocking it, I heard someone laughing. It was a very faint, but a really terrifying and sinister laugh. But still, I thought that I must have imagined it in my head because I was so afraid that I don't get caught by my dad. So I opened the front door, and I went to open the main door. While I was trying to find the keys to the main door, I heard that laugh once again. This time I was sure of it. It was real. Holy crap. I was so terrified even by the idea of some strange lady standing near my house in the middle of the night and laughing that I dropped the keys on the floor. I was so terrified that I was frozen like a statue. I wanted to run away, but it was as if my body refused to move. Even now, thinking about that incident is giving me chills. The next thing I remember was that my father slapped me on my cheek and asked me what the heck is going on. But I didn't say any word and just kept standing like a statue. My father shook me by my shoulder and asked me again. I ended up bursting into tears. I was crying and told him everything that had happened. Next moment, he took out my cricket bat, opened the door, and checked outside, but there was no one to be found. My dad came back and asked me if I was lying to him about all of this. Then I took out my phone and showed him my call history, but there was no call from his number. I was shocked about what had happened just now. I was so shocked, confused, and terrified at the same moment that I threw my phone on the ground and ran inside my room and started to cry. Minutes later, my mom came to me and asked me if I was telling the truth. I convinced her that I was not lying and it was all true. Then she asked me to sleep because I had exams in the morning. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. Then around 5:30 in the morning, my dad came in and said, "It is about time I wake up or I'll be late for my exam." So I got up and got ready and was waiting at the table for my breakfast. Then my dad came to me and asked me to forget all what had happened, because he said that I could have just imagined everything about that someone was standing near our house in the midnight and laughing. He said that it could have been because of sleep deprivation. But I know that I wasn't just imagining things all of a sudden. It was all true, a mistake. Hey, it's been 20 years since this last happened, and I want you guys to make sure you don't make the same mistake I did. One day in November, I and my friends were at a park. We all were about 6 to 7 years old. I met a kid at the park named Riley. She was there with her older brother, and he was nice and looked to be 6 feet. We played with him for 2 hours. Then my mom said that we were leaving in 30 minutes. Then the teenager said that we could play duck, duck, goose in the forest. There was a forest nearby the park, so me and my friends agreed to go with him. He said to my mom that he was going to go get us snacks to eat with us, and she said that it was fine. So we went to the forest with the teenager. We walked for about 10 minutes until he said, "Let's get ready." I and my friends were happy to play, so we got ready. He started to pat on our heads until the kid. Right next to me, Ethan was chosen. The teen told him to come with him and they went walking. Minutes later, me and my friends heard screaming from Ethan. Then it went silent. I and my friends got up and started to run as fast as we could. Then I found my mom and we told her about what just happened. She soon called the police and they went investigating, but they couldn't find anything except a knife with blood on it with handprints on it. There was soon a search party, and it involved most of our whole town in the party. After months of searching, they couldn't find anything. The teen was never caught either. After this, I thought it was my fault, because I was stupid and followed him. But I learned something important, and that is, you shouldn't trust strangers, and you shouldn't too. I want to thank you for reading if you did, and don't make the same mistake as me. Journal of a Schizophrenic. Journal of a Schizophrenic. Journal of a Schizophrenic disclaimer. This is not a creepypasta as you may know them. I am a 16-year-old male that has schizophrenia. I decided to keep a journal to show my therapist any progress I may have made on this new medication over the summer, as I will not be able to see her in my mom's state. This is my real journal accounts. Everything in this post is very real. That does not mean that I'm crazy. Not that I find those words offensive. They are technically accurate, especially for some. However, I am a relatively functional human. Unfortunately, when the paranoia hits, it's a bit different. This may be quite distressing to some because, again, this is real. This will not have a convenient ending. Most of it will be nonsensical fears that I hold. This is just a peek through my day-to-day life. I did not change any of the content here except personal details. I typed it out word for word. I showed this to a couple friends who were curious about my illness, and they got pretty spooked, so I figured I'd post this here for you guys to enjoy. Let me know if you'd like to see more, and I'll keep updating about once a week. Tuesday, June 9th. Stressful day, flew out to Mom's state, and forgot my mask. Went to Holiday, and they had some, so I was able to catch my flight. Everything went smooth enough. First flight was good. Landed 45 minutes early. How is that possible? Second flight was okay. Slept through most of it, but the kid behind me kept screaming at me and slamming his tray. I wanted to smash his head into the seat. Got a haircut when I got home, and it looks really good. It's been way too long. Reflection has been complimenting me a lot. I decided to name him as a reminder that he is not me, and his opinion doesn't matter. His name is Frank, kind of an inside joke between Claire and I. Been talking to her more too lately. I guess she really wasn't avoiding me after all. Left my glasses at the airport, but Mom wasn't mad and said she'd get me a new pair. Dad made cube steaks and gravy, salad and broccoli for dinner, and it was so fucking good. Putta. Oh, we also had really good sushi for lunch. Weighed myself, and I'm 174.6. I'd like to be about 165 by the time I leave. Wednesday, June 10th. Finished watching The Invisible Man with the family tonight. Surprisingly good movie. Also opened up the iPhone 3G and found that the battery was expanded and wouldn't hold a charge. Lost 2 of the screws. Mom and Dad ordered me a new battery though. I think that gets here Friday, so I'm excited for that. Overall, today was a pretty uneventful day, but was a good one. Frank was quite enough today, or at least quieter than usual. Oh, Mom made tortellini soup today. It's my favorite. Thursday, June 11th. My Amazon package comes tomorrow, and I'm pretty excited about that. Today was a pretty chill day. Dad showed me this new show called The Expanse, and it seems really good. Finding distractions is helping me keep my mind off IT and act normal. Frank keeps calling me to the bathroom to talk about IT though. I know they're in there too, but at least they can't see what's in my head. I'm just going to keep myself distracted and act as normal as possible. They can't know that I know. Friday, June 12th. I'm anxious today. Frank's been calling me more and more to talk about IT. I hope they haven't noticed. I want to tell Mom and Dad about them, but I don't want to get them involved. What if they hurt them? I don't know what to do. Scared. Haven't been sleeping well lately. My meds are making me sick, but I know I have to keep taking them. We went to check out the cabin today though, and I'm excited to get out of here. I just don't know if I can wait a whole month. Amazon package came today in an all-white, unmarked truck. I know the man was one of them. I could see it in his eyes. He waved to me from the truck and I had to wave back. They can't know that I know. Don't let them find out. Saturday, June 13th. Went shopping with Mom and Dad today. Got new toothpaste, a sweatshirt, a pair of slides, and 3 shirts. Also got Chick-fil-A, and it was so good. Talked to Frank a lot again. He won't shut up about them. The Amazon driver followed us. Still haven't told Mom. He took my emotions. I don't know when he'll give them back. I was talking to Lydia about it a little bit, and she told me to write it in my journal and come back to it. To see if I've improved in a couple days, I guess. I'm just so tired of being watched all the time. I want to tape over my outlets, but then they'll know. We had a fire tonight and watched a star disappear. Saw a monster in my mirror today too. Black. Blacker than Vanta black. Dripping somehow even blacker liquid from its body. Scared the shit out of me. It had no eyes, but I could feel it looking at me. Tapping on the glass. Tap. 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 Dot. Tap. 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 Sharp claws. I could, if it wanted to, lies my girlfriend was telling me the literal truth when she told me her secret. I had been dating Mary for about 2 months when she told me about the marble. We had already exchanged the L word. At least she had. She said she loved me, that she wanted to be with me forever, that she wanted nothing more than to spend every night of her life with me, in my arms. I couldn't say it back to her, because obviously, how could I? She had never actually spent a whole night with me. How could I say I love you to a woman who desperately rushed out of the door after a few hours with me? Oh, we slept together. There was no problem in that department. The most amazing sex of our lives, we murmured to each other, our limbs and hair intertwined. Then, as we would get drowsy and heavy, she'd jerk up, frantic, her jade green eyes wide open in terror, start pulling on her clothes. "Mary, come back," I'd beg. "Sweetheart, where are you going? Stay with me." She'd kiss me. "No, I can't. I have to go home. I can't sleep over. I told you so." "But why? You said you don't have kids or husband?" I couldn't help the note of suspicion in my voice. "I swear I don't." She would kiss me deeply. "I just can't sleep over. It's nothing bad, I swear. I have to go." And she'd leave. I believed her. And eventually, after she told me she loved me, she swore me to secrecy and told me the real reason why she wouldn't stay. Sitting close to me, snuggling up, she said, "Fareed, please believe me. I turn into marble when I fall asleep." I smiled kindly. "Okay, Mary, whatever." "No, I'm serious. I turn to actual stone when I sleep. It started happening after an old boyfriend of mine." She paused for a moment and swallowed hard. "Tried to assault me while I was asleep. I fought down the shocking rage which flamed inside me. I drew her closer to me, kissed her, and asked, 'What do you mean, my love?' Tears spilled out of her eyes. I don't know why. I've researched. I've never dared tell anyone. At first it was cool. Then, that's how I knew. I started dating again, and it happened the first night I slept over with the new boyfriend. Barry. I was wakened by his screaming. He was screaming, staring at me. I had turned into a marble statue when asleep, and as I wake up, I turn back to normal human flesh. I shook my head. I didn't understand what she was talking about, but I realized it was some sort of trial of our love. I didn't need to understand. I kissed her trembling lips. "Listen, Mary, I don't care about that, okay? You could turn into a frog when you fall asleep and I would still love you." Her eyes lit up. "Oh, Fareed," she sighed. "You've never told me you love me before." I kissed her again. "I haven't? How remiss of me. I'm telling you now. I love you, Mary." She started crying. I thought it was from joy, but thinking back to that night, I realized it was from relief. You don't understand," she sobbed. "How terrified I was of losing you. I love you so much. And the sleeping thing, I've never slept over with a man since Barry. He killed himself. He couldn't handle seeing me turn into marble. It wasn't my fault. He already had issues." I stroked her jet black hair. Shh. "You don't have to talk about it." But she continued sobbing and talking. No, I ruined all my relationships because I couldn't sleep over with anyone. They all said they didn't mind at first. Then they grew suspicious like you just did. Thought I must be cheating on someone. And then I heard you sounding the same. I couldn't bear it. So I'm telling you, it's just because I turn into marble when I fall asleep. I've filmed myself. It starts from my legs, and then the marble comes all the way up. And then when I wake up, it's reversed. From the top of my head going down, I turn back into human. I wanted her to stop talking about the marble and Barry and the other men she'd slept with before me. I held her closely, kissed her face, which was wet with tears. "Please, Mary, please, it's okay. I believe you. I didn't mean to sound suspicious. I'm sorry. Stay over with me tonight, please. I don't care about the marble." Her sobs gradually faded, and she clung to me. Soon enough, our embrace changed from solace and comfort to passion. Our time together was the most joyful we had ever had. The burden of confession off Mary's shoulders, she abandoned herself to pleasure like I have never seen in a woman, and probably never will again. It was around midnight, I think, that we fell asleep, entangled in each other. I jerked awake only a short while after, conscious of a heavy coldness pressing against my skin, my neck. Something stone cold was against me, digging into my flesh. My right arm and leg seemed to be caged in something cold. I reached out with my free arm and switched on the bedside light, confused and groggy. And then, In the harsh electric light, I saw a statue of a woman lying next to me, in white marble veined with jade green and jet black, her stone arms and legs interlaced with mine. I gave a cry of terror, frantically trying to free my captive arm and leg. At the sound, the marble seemed to shiver, and flush of human color started from the top of her head. I was trying to prise myself free, and just as I succeeded in pulling away and pushing her off, her eyes opened. I pushed her off the bed as I jumped backwards. She fell to the ground, and I heard her cry out, and a loud shattering sound, then silence. "Mary," I quavered, and slowly I went around to her side. There she was, lying in 2 marble pieces broken on the ground. Only her head was of human flesh, her black hair spread back, her jade green eyes wide open staring at me in agony, her lips open in her last cry. A package marked, "Return to sender." My neighbor is one of those annoying wannabe YouTube personalities. Over the years, I've seen him cough out cinnamon, lay flat on the hood of his car as it slowly creeps down the driveway, and douse himself in lukewarm water, all the while screaming, "Epic win, epic fail," or "fuck, epic maintenance of the status quo," for all I know. It can get tiring to watch him go about his shenanigans in the pursuit of viral fame. So when he knocked on my door the other day, told me he was going away for a few weeks, and asked that I get his mail, honestly, it was a relief. I can't explain the peace of mind I had knowing I didn't have to brace myself for any of his stupidity for a while. I was always afraid his stunts would wind up bleeding over into my life. Things were pretty normal for the first couple of days. He received a few bills, a bit of spam, and what I could only assume was a birthday card. Then, one evening I got home to find a cardboard box waiting on his front porch. In big red letters was written, "Return to sender." I'm no small fry, but I admit I had trouble lifting the box on my own. It was really freaking heavy. Lugging it across the road to my house was even harder, and I quickly realized there was no way I was going to drag it up the stairs and through my front door. I decided I'd leave his package in my garage. It wasn't like I kept my car in there. The garage door was a piece of shit that refused to open without a good thug and a whack. It was less trouble just leaving the car in the driveway than it was to fight with the garage door every morning and night. In hindsight, I should have set the package down while I struggled to open the tricky door. But you know how it is when you've got a good grip on something. No point in setting it down if you don't have to. It was as I kicked the door for a 3rd time that I lost my grip on the package, and it fell to the ground. I heard a light crack inside. Shit, I cursed. I hoped I hadn't broken anything important, but figured I just wouldn't tell my neighbor about it and let him assume the break happened en route. Hands-free, I finally managed to get the garage door unstuck, and boy did it screech in protest as it rolled up and over me. I dragged the box the rest of the way, setting it in the corner for whenever my neighbor would come back to claim it. And then I forgot all about it. Until a few days passed, that is. I'm not sure exactly how long it took for the smell to waft in from the crack under the garage to house door, but it came in slow progression. It was a sickly, sweet odor similar to a skunk, and for the first few days after I smelled it, I genuinely assumed that's exactly what it was. Roadkill that had left its mark on my house. It was only when I realized the scent was growing more intense instead of fading that I went looking for a source. That's when I opened the garage door, and that's when the odor knocked me back, holding my nose. The culprit wasn't hard to identify. The only change in my garage was the box in the corner. I remember thinking it must have been one of those meat of the month subscription boxes. The meat must have gone rancid from being left out of the fridge for so long. How much meat could have been in there for the box to have been so large and heavy? An entire freaking cow? I covered my nose as I approached the box, a pair of scissors in my hands. I probably wouldn't have needed them to open it, as it had become soggy enough at the bottom to poke through with a finger, but I wasn't about to poke my finger into spoiled meat juices. That soggy bottom was the reason I had to open the box in the first place. If I tried to drag it out whole, everything would spill onto the floor. I was going to have to dump the pieces of meat one garbage bag at a time and take them down to the dumpster, a process I wasn't looking forward to. My scissors tore through the tape along the top of the cardboard box. I thought the smell couldn't get any worse. But as I flipped the flaps open, I discovered a whole new gamut of stink. It was like opening a burning oven, but instead of a heat wave, I was met with waves of piss, sweat, shit, and putrefaction. It was so bad that I staggered back and had to force down the puke, begging to guzzle out of me. I don't think I could have handled that scent mingling with the horrors coming out of the box. I'm not ashamed to admit I ran out the door for a breath of fresh air. But in the short time I'd spent in the garage, the smell had become so ingrained in the fabric of my clothes that it clung to me like a shadow. Nothing I tried could keep the smell out of my nostrils. Not air fresheners, not a face mask, not 3 showers and a change of clothes. Every second that box lay open in my garage was another second the smell was allowed a foothold into my home. I had to bite the bullet. I returned to the garage, the flaps of the box still open as though inviting me to look. I was prepared, a clothespin pinning my nostrils shut, a garbage bag in one hand, the strongest cleaner I could find in the other, and long rubber gloves to keep my skin from having to touch what was inside. But, as it turns out, I needed none of those things. I wouldn't have to touch or clean the contents of that box. I would only have to suffer the nightmares every night. You see, there was meat in that box, but it didn't come from a cow or a pig. No, it was worse than that. It was my neighbor. Dead. Still in one piece, but dead. I called the cops, and naturally they took me in for interrogation. It's kind of hard not to suspect the man with a corpse in his garage after all. Thankfully, they soon realized I wasn't involved. My DNA might have been all over that box. The smell might have left a mark throughout my house. But there was one piece of irrefutable evidence in my neighbor's own hands that proved my innocence. A vlogging camera. They showed me the footage only once. I'm not sure if they were allowed to, or if they felt so bad for me, they figured it couldn't hurt. Either way, I saw it. My neighbor was sitting in the box outside of a shipping facility, laughing as he told the world how he was going to mail himself across state lines. He'd brought pee bottles, food, a pillow, and a few flashlights. His friend, a guy I'd seen at his place several times to help with his stunts, closed the lid and presumably dropped him off for shipment. Throughout the next couple of hours, or days, I'm honestly not sure, my neighbor recorded a few short clips about his progress. I think I'm in a truck now. I can feel it moving. Must be in a warehouse. Pretty warm here. Still got plenty of food. That kind of stuff. And then, on the last entry, the box toppled over. He broke his neck, and that was it. The camera recorded until either the memory card got too full, or the battery died. There's one thing I didn't tell the police after they showed me the video. One thing I heard in the footage that will haunt me to the day I die. Just after the tumble that broke his neck, I heard the familiar screeching sound of my garage door.